Eccentric spacers. What are they? Where can you find them on your 3D printer? And most importantly, how do you adjust them? Stick with me because we're going to cover that today on The First Layer. Welcome to The First Layer. My name's Richard and I am your host here every Wednesday and Saturday night. On Saturdays we do a live show called the Ask for Help, and this is where you can get your questions answered live from 7 to 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. This is the show that explores the world of 3D printing, and today's no different. As you saw at the beginning of the show, we're talking about eccentric spacers today. What are they? Where do you find them? And most importantly, how do you adjust them? Well, let's take a look at what an eccentric spacer is first and how they work. All right, so in front of us here we have an eccentric spacer. What is it? Well, an eccentric spacer is essentially a nut with no threads. And what it does is it rotates the bolt that goes through it around to different distances. So if we look at this one, we have a 6 millimeter eccentric spacer. So what that means is that it's going to fit into a 6 millimeter hole, and it's only 6 millimeters high. Now, if we look at the top, we can see that the hole is offset. So it's thinner here where it's thicker here. So what happens is when this turns, it moves the bolt either closer or further away from its intended area. So you can tighten a bolt without tightening down the actual screw or nut, and it allows it to be pushed in or out from the rails on your 3D printer. Now, a lot of 3D printers come with these types of setups nowadays where they're wheels on some extrusion, and I have my Ender 3 here to show you exactly what they are and how we're going to go about adjusting them. So let's head over to our 3D printer. So in front of me I have the Ender 3. This is my Ender 3 Pro. I've done a couple of things to it, nothing really to take it away from stock too much. We've added a new extruder, an all-metal extruder, so that we don't get the same problems that we had with the plastic extruder. We added a little knob so it's just easier to pull the filament in and out. We've added a BL Touch, of course, and some Capricorn tubing just to make things work a little bit better. I've relocated the spool holder down to the back with a bracket. You can see here I've got some drawers. They hold my tools and essentials. And this is for a future update. What this is this is going to allow me to use a full-size SD card as opposed to a micro SD card. We've also upgraded the board in this one, so it is running a 32-bit Big Tree tech board. This is the E3 Mini V2 that is in here. So it's a silent machine, and we've gotten rid of the magnetic plate, and we are using a BQ Technologies flex plate on this one as well. We've also put a little fan on our power supply, and these are just some of the minor upgrades. And this is just a little cover to cover up the screen so you know the glare doesn't bother you, or you know, you can just keep dust off it. It's also good for that. We're going to do a few more upgrades to this as we go along, but today we're here talking about the eccentric spacers. Where are they? Now, you'll notice on your Ender 3 or similar type of 3D printer, a lot of printers today are coming in this sort of style where they've got these wheels and they run along extrusion. Lotmaxx has it, of course Creality has it, and a few others as well. So where do we find them? So for the first one on this side, we are going to find it right behind the inner wheel. So it is going to be right up against the back of the bracket here. So as I was saying, we can find that right here, and we can see that there's the eccentric nut right there on the inner wheel of the right and left hand sides. There's also one over on this side, and there's one underneath the extruder. Okay, we're also going to find two eccentric spacers underneath our build plate, one here and one at the forward end. Now, how do we go about adjusting them? Well, there's an easy way to do that. And if we turn this around just a little bit so you can see what's going on, we're just going to move our build plate back, and we'll just take that off so it doesn't fall. So when you get your 3D printer and you've got these little eccentric spacers, what we're going to do is first and foremost, we're going to find the wrench that we need, which will be this wrench right here. This is the wrench that will have come with your 3D printer, or one very similar to it. Now, when you're building your 3D printer, make sure that all of your eccentric spacers are tight. So first and foremost, let's go to the extruder or pardon me, the hot end and the hot end carriage, and we'll show you exactly how to adjust that. All right, so we can see here that we've got our hot end, and I've intentionally made it loose. Sometimes you may find that your hot end is loose, and you may think, oh, it might be the banding that holds, or the cabling that holds it all in, but really it's not. It's actually these eccentric spacers. And I get this question a lot. Well, how do I tighten this up and so on? So what you're going to do is you're going to take your wrench, you're going to put it on that eccentric spacer, and you're just going to start turning it until you take out all of that slop on that. You can see it doesn't take much. And now if we move the wheels by hand, we can see that all the wheels are moving, and it's just perfect. It's not bottoming out, and everything is moving just fine. Now, it's a little tougher to do the X and the Y gantry, but we'll get to that. So when you go ahead, and the next thing you want to do is check your bed and make sure that the bed on the printer is also good to go. All right, so we're here looking at the bed now. Now on the bed, we can see that normally it could go back and forth, but in this case, it's pretty loose. You see that? So what do we have to do? Well, we have to go ahead and tighten up the eccentric spacers, which are located, let's go this way, which are located right there underneath the bed. So we take our wrench, we go in there, and just like we did with the other one, we go ahead and we try to adjust those eccentric spacers. Now, of course, I can't see them because I'm trying to show you guys. So we get a wrench around there, support the bed, and just give it a little tighten. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten all of these, and then I'm going to over tighten them so you can see exactly what an over tighten looks like. We've tightened up our eccentric spacers on the bottom of our bed, and here's what happens when you over tighten them. We're going to push it all the way forward, and we're slowly going to bring it back. And you'll feel as you bring it back, and it's right there, right here, that there's a little bit of a stopping point. And it might feel like you're in a bit of a rut, but you are not in a rut at all. And you'll get another one. There's another one right there. What that means is that your wheels are still perfectly good, your rail is perfectly good, you've just over tightened the eccentric spacers. So what we have to do now is go back and loosen those up so we get nice, even travel. And there is that other stopping spot right there. So, and you can do this just by moving your bed back and forth slowly. Don't move it fast because you'll send a current back to the board inside the machine, and that could short something out. And you'll notice that when your LCD starts to light up. All right, so we're going to go in and adjust these eccentric spacers, and I'll show you the smooth action of what a bed should be. Okay, so once you have them perfectly adjusted, you'll be able to move the bed back and not feel what feels like a dropout or a flat spot. It should move nice and smoothly, and your bed will not wiggle. So we are in good shape. Let's move on to the Z axis, and we'll show you exactly how to adjust that as well. If the gantry is loose like we have here, you can see there's a lot of play in there. Now I've gone ahead and loosened these up just to show you what it looks like, and you'll be able to spin some of these wheels fairly freely. Like I'm moving this one just like both of these I'm moving by hand. So what you want to do with this is, first and foremost, we're going to remove the LCD. We're just going to grab an Allen key, And you should have gotten Allen keys with your 3D printer. And we're just going to go ahead and take off the monitor here. As soon as I find both bolts. Because we're going to need this room. And the reason that we need the room is because we're going to put two things of equal size underneath the X gantry. And I'll show you exactly where I'm going to put them here. I must have tightened that one on pretty good. Okay, so remove your monitor and just put it off to the side, or you can totally unplug it, and I like to do that myself, but we're going to totally unplug it. Now here's what we're going to do. You can see that we've got some space here. I'll just move this back a little bit so you guys can see. And now I'm going to use some machinist blocks. I just happen to have some of these in my collection of stuff. You don't have to use machinist blocks if you don't have them. You don't want them underneath the frame, this part. What we're going to do is we're going to rest this X gantry on these machinist blocks. We're going to do it for both sides. Oh. And this is definitely going to help us. So now I'm going to lower this down so that the X gantry rests upon it. And I want it to rest evenly on there. So we know that one's a little snug and that one's a little snug. So we are perfect as far as our gantry goes. Now the reason that we're doing this is because we want to make sure that this X gantry is level, because if it's not level, it's going to mess up a bunch of things. So first and foremost, we're going to start off on this side. We want to get this side just so that our wheels are not moving freely. And again, like I said, we have two wheels that are moving freely. So we are just going to tighten it up. Now, if the bottom one is moving freely, as you can see here with my thumb, we're going to bring the nut in the opposite direction to kind of pull that in and push the top one out a little bit. And we're only going to do that till we get to a point where it doesn't move. Now that's good. That's perfect. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. Our top one is good, our bottom one is good, and our inside one is good. Great. And again, you're going to do this by feel. Make sure that when you do this that you can't move any of those. But you do, again, you don't want to over tighten. And now we go to the other side and we check the other side. We notice that our top wheel is a little foobar. So what are we going to do? We're going to take our wrench, we're going to put it on that eccentric nut, and we're going to go in the opposite direction just till we get it to tighten up. And you'll feel it when it's tight. Okay, so now that's tight. My inner wheel's tight. My outer wheel is tight. I'm going to go back and check these. And I notice that this one has loosened up a little bit. So I'm going to just give it a little bit of a tighten. And there we are. All of our wheels are nice and snug. Again, this is all going to be done by feel, so you're just going to test this out a little bit at a time. You don't have to move it a lot. That's perfect now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove my blocks, because now I know that I'm right in that comfort zone of this being where I want it to be. So now my X gantry is level to the rest of my frame or very close to it. You're never going to get it perfect unless you've got a dual Z motor axis. So in this case, when you've only got one Z motor, you're going to get this as close as you can, okay? The other thing that you can do, if you don't have blocks like that, you can also use a ruler and you can measure the distance. So let's go ahead and reassemble this, and we'll carry on. So eccentric spacers, that's all there is really to adjusting them on your 3D printer. On most style printers like this that come with extrusion and these types of setups, they're really easy to adjust. A lot of people just don't know they're there. That's the problem. So one of the things that I like to let people know when I'm teaching them, new students, is where these eccentric spacers are, how you can find them, and how you can adjust them. Once you've got your system adjusted, your prints are going to come out great in the end. And again, there's really not a whole lot of work to it. You've got a wrench that came with your 3D printer. That's what you're going to use to adjust them. If you don't, I'm not really sure what the size is, but I'll put it down in the link below. So if you want to use your own wrench, you can. Now, it is a little tight getting in there sometimes. You'll notice I added a drawer to my Ender 3 Pro here. So it's a little tighter for me to get in and set those up. Again, some things that are essential to leveling this X gantry or squaring it to the rest of the frame is having something of equal size on both sides. Now, that can be a couple of machinist blocks, or it can be a couple of blocks that you 3D print, or a couple of cans of soup, or even a couple of glue sticks if you are using glue stick on your glass. So it's really simple to do. It's not that hard. I encourage you all to go and check and make sure that all of your eccentric spacers are not too loose and not too tight. With that said, my friends, if you're new here, I want to thank you for making it all the way to the end. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button. Also, ding that little bell so you get notified about all of our new episodes when they do come out or when we go live, as well as leave a like if you like this and you got something out of today's content, because that goes a long way to helping the channel survive and bring you more content. So with that said, my friends, thank you for joining me today, and remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print.